What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back. It's been well over a month since I've done this, but welcome back to Thrash Reviews, where yours truly, Thrash Maniac 99, continues to review upcoming hard rock and heavy metal albums in the calendar year of 2016. And since I'm back at this a little bit more this time around, I do hope to get to more albums here in the future that I've missed all year, so I can get caught up going into the next several months, because there's a lot of big albums coming out. And today I am reviewing one of the most anticipated albums of the year, the newest release from one of the greatest in the history of music, Opeth from Sweden, and their new album SORCERESS. For those who don't know, Opeth formed back in 1990, started out as more a straightforward death metal band. Then, right around the time of 1992, 1993, they began to experiment with progressive elements and melodic elements, kind of like going for a mixture of melodic death metal and prog music, mashed them up into a blender for the first couple albums, Orchid and Morning Rise. Then they continue to go down that path, except not melodic death metal per se, more traditional death metal mixed with prog rock. And over the years, they put out monumental classic albums such as Still Life, Blackwater Park, and the classic double album Deliverance and Damnation. Even one of my all-time favorite albums from them, Ghost Reveries, was a masterpiece. But since 2011 with their album Heritage, and then a couple of years ago, Pale Communion, which I did review on this channel, they've started to kind of go down more a prog rock sound. But let's see how the third time going into this realm for Opeth is with this album, SORCERESS. So the opening introduction track was called Persephone, and it's this very folky kind of opening segue track that goes into the real track opener, the title track, SORCERESS. And I remembered talking about this song a few months ago when it was released, and I did a video talking about how the album should be, in my personal opinion. But back to with the actual song, it has that real jazz fusion introduction, then it gets crushing with the guitars, and it's like Opeth kind of went back to their roots a little bit, but not in a death metal sense, more just in the traditional heavy metal sensibility, kind of like Black Sabbath, early Judas Priest. That's kind of more or less what I thought they were trying to go for their metal influences. And the track itself was a great Kickstarter for what this album was going to be recognized as going forward. The next track I want to talk about is the following track, the most recent single, The Wildflowers. Another heavy track for the first half, and then it gets more mellow for a couple of minutes, and then it gets back into being very heavy towards the end. And that's always been a trick with Opeth's playbook, is that they always like to throw in curveballs here and there to give their songs a more diverse atmospheric feel to it, with the dynamic shifts, some time signature. Hello, it's Tigger. Time signature shifts, even though they don't really go for that too much in their music, but when they do, it does create some complexity within the music. And this track certainly kept that vibe going. The next track I want to talk about was the following track, Will-O-the-Wisp. And just thinking of the song title makes me think of Jeff Hardy in TNA with the Will-O-the-Wisp gimmick. And if TNA were to still stick around, I hope they would make Will-O-the-Wisp's theme song this. Because this was a very beautiful, but yet dark, prog rock, folk rock tune that was mostly acoustic guitar oriented with beautiful singing from Michael Ockerfeld. And it's a beautiful tune. You should definitely listen to it. And then the next track I want to go into is CHRYSALIS, or CHRYSALIS, which was one of the longer tracks of the album at a little over 7 minutes, and for fans of old school Opeth, without the death metal vocals, this track is for you, and this was one of my favorite tracks of the album. Kind of took me back to that watershed period of the band where they started to gradually move away from the death metal trend. Even though that album had a lot of death metal within, it was mostly prog metal, oriented with some prog rock overtones. And this song was basically a representation of that album without death metal being involved. And I thought it was a really cool element to throw in with the album. So already we've had some pretty heavy tunes, but also a couple of melodic tunes. And continuing that melodic trend is the song Sorceress 2, which kind of harkens you back a little bit to combining sounds from the Damnation era as well as Pale Communion. Another dark, sinister track without really much metal behind it. Then the next track, the seventh, Sojourn, was a very Damnation-sounding track. And it was mostly instrumental, despite a few kind of like psychedelic voices going on throughout parts of it towards the end. But it was mainly an instrumental track. And wow. Very, very well done for an instrumental. And now the final track I want to talk about is Strange Brew, the longest track of the album at nearly 9 minutes in length. Pretty much throws in everything they've done in the previous 7 tracks into one big culmination. Kind of surprised this wouldn't have been closer to the end of the album, but it was still a phenomenal track. Probably one of Opeth's best tracks they've done in recent memory. No doubt about it. And then, as you get to the next couple tracks, A Fleeting Glance and Era, that kind of continue more in that prog rock territory before closing it out with Persephone's Slight Return, which was like half the length of the first, the Persephone intro. So it's like they used the Persephone track as the intro and outro songs, which was very well done, if you ask me personally. And that was the main album. There is a couple of extra tracks on the limited edition, such as The Ward and Spring MCML XXIV, which I know it's like Roman numerals, but I don't go too far with that. But anyways, so overall, top to bottom with this album, I know a lot of people out there, and I prefaced this in the Opeth video I did a few months ago when they released the song Sorceress and announced they were moving to Nuclear Blast Records, which was a good move for them. And, man, I keep saying, it's like Nuclear Blast Records is the metal record label you want to be on, because there's so much good quality stuff coming out of that label, great bands, upcoming bands trying to make a name for themselves. But back to the album itself, yeah, I'm one of those people who saw what Opeth did after Watershed, moved away from the prog death metal into prog rock, and I didn't see a problem with it. If they wanted to explore some of the more progressive elements within their music as opposed to trying to do it all in the metal fashion, that's all fine. It's kind of like they're trying to go into like that Pink Floyd realm of things with their prog sound. But this album was sort of like the culmination of what they have done with the previous 2 albums, but bringing back some of that metal component to the point where you could even call this a progressive metal album. I'd say it's both prog metal and prog rock. It was a good balance between the heavy tunes and the melodic tunes, sort of like Ghost Reveries or Watershed, for example. And like I said in the Opeth video I did a few months ago, they didn't need to go back to the death metal vocals to be a heavy band again. And I preface that it could be like in a Dream Theater sense, where it's prog metal and prog rock combined, and still be heavy, but still be very melodic. And that's what this album really did. So overall, top to bottom, phenomenal music. This has definitely been their best work since Watershed, for sure. While Heritage was decent, Pale Communion was pretty damn good, but Sorceress topped them both. This was a great album. 96 out of 100. This was almost close to being perfect, but there was just still a couple moments that could have made it perfect. Is if they had a couple tracks that had a little bit longer length to it, but that would be the only complaint I could really come up with. Otherwise, this album is beautiful, it's heavy, it's melodic, it's everything you would want from Opeth, really. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Peace.